Hi, and welcome to Ask the Manager. I decided that we shouldn't have any guests this week because I have too many questions. So with that, I'll get started. And we do, of course, have our town manager here with us. And the first thing I'd like to start with is it was just so exciting to see the Special Olympics men's basketball team come home and be greeted by the residents. They got a silver medal. World silver medal for basketball. So that was just tremendous.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations to them.
I know. And I noticed they were recognized at the selectmen's meeting, which was also very nice. And they were in Abu Dhabi. Who goes to Abu Dhabi? So that was really wonderful for them. Now, you've finished your budget hearings?
No, I've not started budget hearings. Well, sorry. Saturday budget hearings, yes.
Saturday
now we're moving into the town meeting warrant.
To the home stretch.
Yep, I've shifted.
Right, so you're beyond budget hearings.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I missed the budget hearings because I was out of town. But I just find them to be so interesting, and so it was odd to miss them this year. So I have lots of questions.
Okay.
But some of them are relative to the types of questions I get asked usually in the grocery stores.
Yep.
I find that when I shop in the daytime, people stop me and have all sorts of questions. People are still questioning the reorganization in town. Explain how that, when I say reorganization, you shifted departments and consolidated departments under one person and so forth. How many FTEs did that involve, adding?
Well, net FTEs, it was less than 2 full-time equivalent employees, because what we did is we shifted the role of a number of positions. Like, let's use an example, the highway superintendent position, which is John Knipe's position. Whenever when Mr. Knipe retired, which was, I think in early August, instead of backfilling with a highway superintendent position, we utilized that point in time to move towards the DPW organization, which is a consolidation of a number of former departments into divisions. So, and it's a little bit nuanced, but the division manager position title is what took the place of a department head position title. So, division manager has a little bit less administrative responsibility and overall direction, a little bit less overall direction, and a little bit more on the ground responsibility than the former department head did. And that really allowed us to have the DPW director have the full department head authority, have a very highly skilled technical expert that has a lot of supervisory responsibilities, but also a lot of technical field responsibilities. Ultimately, that led, now that we're kind of fully reorganized, we've got a lot of change management to go and helping folks get comfortable with that. But we eliminated 2 department head positions and merged them into a single one. So we actually have less department heads than we did at the outset. It was a net 2 FTEs in the overall budget last year. One of those was actually in the town manager's office, the human resources coordinator position. So DPW in and of itself, was just, 1 full-time position.
Now our town has grown, and I think it's important for people to understand that the philosophy behind a lot of this reorganization is it's just a busier, bigger town than it was, with more responsibilities, and so it delivers better services by having it the way you have it set up. It's not that you were setting up a dynasty below you or around you. It's to be more efficient with the work that needs to get done.
Yeah, and I'm not afraid to say that I need department heads to do more planning and not be in the field as much. I really need the DPW director to be thinking 6 months and a year ahead of time, and have those division managers be thinking 3 to 6 months ahead, and the foreman to be thinking a week or 2 ahead, and the employees to be out executing the tasks that we need to do. Because I don't know if anyone had the opportunity to watch the selectmen's meeting. this past week, but I encourage you to do that because you're going to be surprised if you haven't seen it, how many projects just in the DPW area that we're going to undertake this summer. It's going to cause some summertime pains with travel, but we're talking about another 2+ miles of water line, various roadway reconstruction projects, and then we have the state in town. And we still take a very hands-on role in having our own engineers and surveyors and everyone out in the field, making sure that even if the state's in charge, that we're there at those meetings and seeing what's going on, so we make sure it's to our standards. So I think the presentation was over a half an hour, and there's a lot going on when we look at DPW. We talked a little bit about it last year. It's a $23 million business line for the town. And I thought it was really important to make sure we had clear responsibilities throughout that organization and provide those technical experts the planning support and the ability to work between levels, so to speak.
So we have a very busy town, and that's all good because all of the work that's being done is progress. And I think it's better service to the residents in having that done. Now, when we talk about budget hearings, I couldn't help but notice on the news when Methuen was having layoffs of police officers. And I don't know how to judge the size of Methuen in comparison to Shrewsbury. But to think that they would, and I don't know if they did it in the end, but they were talking about laying off 50 police officers. And I think they have a staff of 100. To me, I find that to be unfortunate that they were getting themselves into that circumstance. And I question what type of planning they had that they would be up to 50 layoffs all at one time. And I don't know the strategy behind the publicity or any of that. But just to put that into perspective and the efficiency of what we operate with, 50 police officers. How many police officers do we have in town?
That's about our full complement.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So Methuen to Shrewsbury, they were laying off basically
our entire force.
Exactly, our entire police force. But speaking of the police force, what did you do with the police force with the budget hearings this time around?
So there's one additional police officer to be funding that would get us to that full complement. That is, in the Chief Hester's plan. We had talked about that, as I was coming on board, and he had requested, at that time would have been 3 additional officers, and those have been funded. It's not, it's not the end of it, in years in the future. We'll always look at it and make sure that we're at the right staffing levels, but this puts us in a really good position where next year I don't think there'll be any additions, at least right now, but it's subject to change as we go throughout the course of the year and look what fiscal year 2019 brought to us with call volume and our stress points, and then what's going on in the existing aspects of the community, and then what again is on the horizon with additional development with residential, because there's still a lot going on.
So there was a year that we put on, I think it was 3 police officers in one budget, and they have to come out of the academy, the officers, and then go into what's called field training.
That's right.
And the field training gets cumbersome if you have too many people basically on orientation at the same time.
Exactly.
And their field training orientation is an extended period of time. It's not a 2-week type orientation because there's so much for them to learn and to be comfortable with, and for us to be comfortable with them.
Exactly.
So I know that at one point the chief requested that we slow down in the process just so that they get a solid orientation, and that it's not a bigger burden on the department to get them up to speed. Right. What did you do with the fire department?
The fire department staffing levels will remain the same in the FY20 budget. The Board of Selectmen did authorize and support another SAFER grant, which would seek funding for 4 additional officers. A lot of hard work has gone into that. Firefighter Borowick, Chief Vona have done a lot of digging into why we haven't been successful in past years, and we're in the best position yet to get that funding. But the Board of Selectmen also signaled that, regardless of funding for this or not, we need to put the plan together to get the department, consider the increased staffing levels. They certainly supported the 4 through the grant, and we can't just rely upon the grant, though.
And with the grant, you always know that there's an end point to that funding,
Right.
and then the town takes over
That's right.
that fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
Along with that, I have so many grant comments in here because there are a lot of grants that have been awarded to the town. What causes us to be so successful with grants at this time? Is it better grant writing? Are we better educated at getting them put together?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we certainly are getting better and better. It's one of those things that you find the recipe that works. But there's a number of other things that happen. First, it's writing the grant, right? We have the technical experts. We're having the right people, put pen to paper that are the technical experts. There's no fluff in our grant applications. We're very straightforward. Second, I have to give a nod to the Baker-Polito administration for having a lot of grant programs to start with. They recognized, over 5 years ago, or 4+ years ago when they came into office, that getting money into the hands of municipalities enables the best utilization of funds, because we can tackle the problems that we see, and it's not the state directing funding at their own discretion. So there's just more grant programs out there, and their partnerships, especially in the economic development realm with the Mass Downtown Initiative and Mass Development, are really hitting our wheelhouse because of their strengths in planning through the Assistant Town Manager, Kristen Lass. We've been very fortunate, and we have great, great advocacy in the general court from Senator Moore and Representative Kane. So it really takes a concerted effort, and I haven't seen that in any town still having the ability to remember what it was like not to be getting grant applications. But I see those things, clear legislative support, the grants are being written not centrally but within those departments, and just a couple extra opportunities that we've been able to exploit. So
good.
Yeah.
That's great. And we'll get into those as we go along. The Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, Shrewsbury with Central Mass Regional Planning. What was that all about?
So that's a plan that's based upon federal standards that puts us in the pipeline for federal dollars, and it really looks at the infrastructure of the town and be able to mitigate things like flooding and identify what our hazards are, and then with the identification of these and in concert with other folks in the region, we can draw down on federal funds to be able to mitigate any issues that we have in the future.
And what types of hazards were identified in our town?
I mean, mainly flooding and low-lying areas, roadway issues, things like that. A lot of similarities to the Municipal Vulnerability Program as well. So, I mean, that was the heart of it.
Do we have many low-lying areas?
Well, dips in roadways and things like that, where we have ponding and things that can be addressed from, a comprehensive standpoint when we're looking at a grant program like this and we worry about these periods with climate change, with more rain and shorter periods of time. It causes issues, new issues, some old issues that we're able to address through these plans.
Okay, so an act relative to affordable housing in Shrewsbury, which was Senate Docket 93. What was that about?
So this is kind of more of the same. So we've been aggressively pursuing for the last number of years, at least since 2013, and I think before that, recognition by the state legislature that we should be able to count mobile home units as affordable housing. So Rep. Kane and Senator Moore have offered legislation. The town meeting will look to affirm at the upcoming town meeting, but it's really the refiling of that bill since we're in a new legislative session.
And John LeBeau did a lot of work with that.
Absolutely.
I can't even remember how many years ago. So this is something that he's been, and all the selectmen have been working on for quite some time. Did I read something about, I don't even know what to call them, like prefab houses being able to be counted as affordable units?
I think that's a similar term to, probably a better term than, manufactured housing is probably the right term to use. But it's interesting because, you mentioned Selectman LeBeau. with his early work on this, you're now seeing a lot of other communities kind of, I'm not saying get behind us, but there's not only other communities that are offering similar legislation, but there's some aspects of some not special legislation, but general legislation that's coming into the legislature in this session that's awful similar. I'm not saying they're cheating off of us, but we certainly are a leader in this area of thought, and it's nice to see.
And that helps Shrewsbury in the process if other towns are saying the same thing.
Correct. Yep.
So John had a good vision back many years ago and was consistent with it. So sometimes changes like this take time.
Absolutely.
But it'll be worth it to Shrewsbury if something can get through, and he's working, the town's working with representatives to make that happen, hopefully. So hopefully we'll have better progress with that now. The Clean Water Act, oh my. People are very confused on what's happening with that. And I'd like to point out, and I brought it purposely from home, this is a notice that we received from the town and from the water department, in the water and sewer department.
That's right.
And I just want to point out, recognize this, and you did receive this in the mail. If you didn't, you should at least go online and try to read about what's happening with the Clean Water Act and the requirements that are put on municipalities today. So when people get the bill, first of all, the average bill for this should be about $90. Right. So it's not that bad. We don't want it, but it's not that bad. But it is something that's going to be new and different. And the decision, well, first of all, I'd like you to talk about what this is and why.
Sure. So this is a federal permit that has been issued to the town, mainly because of our density, recognizing that we're essentially meet urban area characteristics. And the federal government, through the Clean Water Act, recognizes the inherent that when it rains and rain travels across impervious surface, so rooftops, driveways, sidewalks, roadways, parking areas that are dirt but are compacted because of constant travel over, that they run across the land and pick up contaminants and ultimately make their way into our streams and into lakes and into our water supply. So the EPA has mandated that the municipality first and foremost better document and understand our stormwater collection and management system. And they've also set goals to reduce known levels of contaminants. And our biggest contaminant in our drinking water is phosphorus, very prevalent, naturally occurring in leaf decay and things like that, but then also in fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers and things that are bought for lawn maintenance purposes and other things. So it is a permit, it is a mandate from the federal government that we better manage the stormwater after it falls, because they see it as us taking ownership of that water as it's flowing through our drainage system.
So before you go any further with that, people are commenting, but the water doesn't go into the road. The water from my property stays on my property. The water drains into my backyard. The water doesn't drain into the street. What's the response to that? Well,
so some of that is certainly true, and some of it also is there's a public good involved in it. So as it collects, it may go into a wetland and then ultimately into a drinking water supply. So yeah, it's less about it just going straight to a roadway and more about what it's picking up along the way, and making its way to Lake Quinsigamond or into smaller ponds and causing algae blooms and things like that. So it eventually makes it to a waterway or into an underground water system that is more and more becoming contaminated because of what the stormwater's picking up along the way.
So we want the rain, we don't want the rain, we want the rain, we need the rain, no, we don't want the rain.
Right, we just want it to be clean.
We want clean rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it dirty coming down, or is it dirty just from the
It really
ground contaminants?
Yeah, whenever it hits those impervious, or I don't know the quality of it, you know, in the clouds, but you know, it picks up a lot of the contamination once it hits those hard surfaces and isn't able to make its way and naturally filter itself through rock formations and things like that.
So when you talk about impervious surfaces, we now look at, well, gee, how big is my roof? What does that mean? What about my driveway? I have a big driveway. Oh, good thing I have a small driveway. I didn't pave my driveway, but it's solid dirt.
Right.
The solid dirt driveway is still counted
It
as
is, yep.
impervious.
Yes. Yep.
So we'll all be needing education on this, and there'll be so many questions because people won't be happy to think they're being charged more. Needing to understand it's not bad planning. It's we're meeting the mandates. We're meeting the requirements. And just this week, I think it was, on Good Morning America, they had one of the people in Argentina and showing the waterfalls and talking about the environment and how that has decreased due to contamination in the world. But all of that relates to us and what goes up into the clouds and what comes down in the rain. So this is bigger than anything we can ever totally understand. We just need to know that it's all with needed intentions, not just good intentions, necessary intentions for today and for the future of our environment. And then, of course, now they're showing pictures of the black hole that everybody said didn't exist. So, you know, we're getting better educated as a society and doing what needs to be done. So the fee, how did you calculate the fee?
So we started with the permit and said, what does the EPA require us to do? And how will we manage and meet those expectations of our permits? And we came up with a dollar amount, about $1.9 million a year for us to manage that. And then we said, well, if it's really about stormwater traveling across impervious surfaces and making its way into collection systems, et cetera, we have a way to differentiate different types of properties and try to be fair in how we raise that $1.9 million. So we established the fee based on the total impervious surface area on any given property. And the base threshold property is about 1/4 of an acre of impervious surface. So if you're below 1/4 of an acre of impervious surface, which is a pretty big area, you will pay the $90. And that's 91% of all properties within the community. And then as you exceed that square footage, you move into various other tiers. And we looked at this kind of from the tax perspective. You know, what if it was a property tax, and we figured out a way to do an override or some other way to carry it through the tax levy. And we found that the home value or the property value wasn't the best way to do it, because the average home, or more than 50% of the homes in the community, would have paid $125 a year versus the $90 that we can charge them.
So they save money with the process.
Yeah, we are fairer,
You
yes.
save money with the process that's in place.
Yeah.
I think that's also important to know, because people are stopping me in the grocery store and saying, why aren't we putting this into our tax rate? And, you know, I think it's important to know. This is actually in the resident's best interest, to have the homeowner's best interest, or the property owner's best interest, to have it not be in the tax rate, and to have it be just an assessment. Now, that assessment is an annual
It's correct,
payment.
$90 a year.
And this number is set for 5 years.
That's our goal with that rate setting process, yes.
And then in about 4 years, you'll reevaluate it and plan from there.
Yeah, you know, part of that evaluation process will be testing our stormwater. Do we still have phosphorus issues that we may have to put some type of mechanical treatment or other treatment in? And we're actually applying for another grant to set up a kind of a pilot program on the new Beal property as we're going to construct, a sophisticated new stormwater system for that. Let's get a grant to be able to pilot some treatment systems so we know how it would work. It'll be a lot of impervious surface, so we'll collect a lot of stormwater there.
Because the town's also going to be paying for their impervious surface.
The town is,
technically.
yeah, absolutely. The town is the biggest, has the biggest stormwater bill. It's $121,000 a year. So, but you look, it's because we have a number of properties, a number of big buildings, obviously. But if you do look at some of our more intense development with a lot of impervious surface, White City, Lakeway Commons, yeah, they have some pretty big bills.
Yeah.
But they contribute a lot into the stormwater because they're collecting everything that if it was a natural meadow would just seep its way into the ground, and they're grabbing that and it eventually makes its way into the lake.
So the one thought I had is how else could we pay for this? And we have, revenue from restaurant taxes, and we have all this new revenue, which is good. And I thought, well, if there's a 3% marijuana tax, why don't we just dedicate that to where it needs to go to impact the this bill? Or is it because we know we could spend it so many other places?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we have a lot of needs on the operating side of things, and this fee is, I think, again, the fairest way to do it. So, I mean, marijuana tax certainly, could contribute, but I mean, I think under the rosiest scenarios on the actual excise tax that could be used for general purposes is like $400,000. We still have a long way to go to be able to cover that $1.9 million annual bill.
Unless we put up a few extra stores.
Yep.
But it seems that everybody else is putting up, what would you call them, retail stores now. So we're now in competition to make sure that ours is up and running and organized. Where are we with that? And then I'll go back to the water.
Sure. So we have the entity formerly known as Prime Wellness made it the whole way through our special permit process and went to the Cannabis Control Commission and asked for final permit approval. And we're still in conversation with the Cannabis Control Commission because that company changed hands. There's been a lot of press, if anyone's interested, in the Boston Globe about conglomerates that have bought up a number of facilities. But you're only allowed to have 3 companies anywhere in the Commonwealth. That's what the state law says. So there's some investigations going on at a very corporate, higher level at the Cannabis Control Commission about who owns what. And unfortunately, this business entity is part of that. And we just want to take our time to make sure we know who's going to be operating that. It's what the Board of Selectmen focused on the whole time. Who's it going to be? Are we comfortable? Are they going to run the right business? So that one is at the final stage, but we're still in the final stage of approval.
So that sounds like we give a liquor license to a restaurant and the manager changes and the change of manager. So it will be the same with this over time. It will change.
It will.
But you have the same regulations and you have the same oversight.
Right.
Okay, back to water and sewer. You're going to change the monthly billing?
We're not.
We're not.
We're not. So
why?
Well, we haven't had the best performing water. We've had a lot of quality issues that we're really focused on. And with the implementation of the new stormwater bill, we just didn't feel that it was right to make the change right now. And also underpinning all that is that we kind of had a light bulb go off in our head that said, well, we can collect data on a monthly basis, but still bill quarterly. So we're not going to impact the customer. We're going to get the data that we need to help with unaccounted for water. So we've chosen that path as it is right now. So no bill changes except for the addition of stormwater for water and sewer. It'll continue to be quarterly, but starting in March, we have started collecting data on a monthly basis.
Okay, so the water treatment plant is biological, not chemical treatment. And that means that there's a natural way, instead of putting more chemicals into the environment, there's a natural way with bacteria.
Correct.
Actually.
So we have manganese-loving bacteria that's eating the manganese out of the water, capturing it, blowing themselves up as bacteria are programmed with one-track mines and eating all the manganese, and then we don't let that into the system, and we flush it out and dispose of it.
And so we have no manganese in the water that leaves the treatment plant, but then it goes into the pipes, which are being flushed around town.
Yes.
Which I happen to live in a neighborhood that went 4 days without water between 8 and 4, which if you're get in your car and you go to work, it's like by the time you come home, you're all set, the water's back on. But when you're at home and the water is off for 4 hours, my excuse was, oh, I have to cook something simple. I can't cook anything more complicated. And I'm sure people
So you went out to eat?
No, actually we didn't. I just cooked like hamburgers and things like that. But with that, people were inconvenienced.
Yes.
But something good came from that, and something very important was being done, and that's that they're flushing the pipes, which is because the sediment and the manganese can still be left in the pipes. So the water department went around town, opening hydrants, flushing the water. It actually, from my perspective, wasn't a bad event. We had the good fortune of every time we put the water on the faucet outside, it was clear, and it ran clear each time. So we were lucky. I don't know how other people panned out, how their luck was. But I know that a couple of times I called and asked questions, and I'm telling you, the woman who answered the phone was so good and so informative and tried to be so helpful. She even got back to me with some questions when Bob got back in the office. And I just thought, gee, was there a better way than having to receive all the calls? I know there was information online saying 4 days, but I happened to be in an area where, well, they were on Old Mill Road, so we still had to, comply. And then, oops, they were over on Elm Street, we still had to comply. Then they came through our neighborhood on the 4th day. So, not that and I'm really not complaining about it. What I was sympathetic to was the calls that must have come through, and I didn't know if there was a way to keep people updated a little bit more, or if you just don't have time to do that.
Yeah. So we've tried to really use Code Red a lot more than we have. We feel that we can no longer rely just upon the website, because simply that means folks have to go there. So we need to be pushing messages out to our residents, and we're looking to enhance communication. So maybe we won't have to use Code Red as much anymore, because we'll be different social media platforms and hitting folks where they are. And that's definitely a goal for 2020 for the town manager's office, and we're putting resources in place to do that. But we really felt that we had to rely upon Code Red so we can make sure that we're giving everyone as much information as possible.
I liked it. I liked when we got the Code Red calls, because it did help us. It was canceled because of the weather, so it didn't get to us until the following week. That was helpful. So I find that to be a good thing.
And we're doing our best to make, it's not going to be the last time we flush hydrants, but we are so focused on getting every speck of sediment off that lining of the pipes that we possibly can. It's taken us a little bit longer because, in our prior conversations on this show and otherwise, the whole water chemistry in the system changed. So we're no longer introducing chemicals to try to keep manganese in a suspended state, which makes it want to attach to the outside of those pipes. So when we stopped doing that, it made the manganese, my words, probably an engineer would not agree, brittle around the outside. So now we're in there flushing. So we're getting a whole lot more out than we ever have in the past, because it's in a state where it wants to go away. It wants to be flushed out of the system. So we've hit sections of town like Holden Street before Sewell and coming up St. John's Hill that used to go really quickly through, but now because of that accumulation and the topography, it's taken us days to do sections that used to take us hours, but we're not leaving until it runs clear. We're not going to move on. And further, we're noting those, and we're going to come back and ice pig and scour those same pipes where we're having a lot of issues.
And what's ice pig?
So ice pigging is it's actually a patented method where we introduce a slurry of water and ice into the water main system through a high pressure truck, and it
Like a slushy?
yeah, like a slushy, but it's just that a little bit more friction than plain old water that, you know, beats along the inside of the pipes and scours it, and we plug those pipes full, and then we release it, and it's really gives us a little more teeth inside with our flushing process to get even more sediment out. So we're going to come back in late May where we are noting some continued issues, and we think we'll be even more effective, but we're trying to get beyond it.
You know, as you were talking, I was thinking, it wasn't so much cooking the meal with the water being off. I couldn't believe how much I washed my hands in a day, that I couldn't just turn the faucet on to wash my hands. I think that was a bigger inconvenience, but just a little piece of useless information. So now, solid waste collection, that's changing too. Everything's changing.
Yeah,
so now we're going to have a new company.
Correct.
Now, we were so comfortable and accustomed to having Pellegrino, but it's about the bids. Is that?
Yeah, so we went through a request for proposal process and set up criteria that we look for companies to respond to. So we looked at you know, these various criteria, and 5 of us ranked companies without looking at prices, and we selected the highest responding. We're looking for, you know, customer service, technology, automation, equipment, processes, things like that. And waste management came out the most advantageous. And they also came out for the prices that we opened. We received 4 proposals back, but out of all the prices, they were the lowest. And we negotiated even lower once we were able to see what their proposals were and make some refinement to them. So I'm confident that even though our prices are going up by 20%, that has more to do with the 5-year snapshot in time since the last time we accessed the market or put a new contract in place, and the inflationary rate and the year-over-year contract changes. So it's a new opportunity for the town to pursue. We are, you know, look to provide a very high level of service, and we spend a lot of time working on our communications plan that will begin hitting the street within the next few weeks. We're going to have a lot of public meetings, a lot of different days of the week, on the weekends, different locations, so folks can come out. We're making changes, but it's not wholesale changes. The biggest change is recycling will be on a weekly basis, but you'll alternate paper and cardboard one week, and then the commingled plastic and metals the next week. And we'll give you a schedule so you know which week you're on. You'll probably just have to look in the container and see which one's less full.
Look at the neighborhood,
exactly.
And check out what everybody else has out.
So, but we will be collecting recyclables every week. And one thing I want to point out, because it may concern some folks, is that we're going to have one truck. The one side of the truck is going to be trash. The other side of the truck is going to be recyclables. So you're going to see them dumping trash and recyclables into the same truck, but that's an efficiency. That's less trucks on the street. That's less, you know, fuel that's being burned, it will get separated. One will go to the incinerator. One will go to our materials recovery facility that we struck a contract with Casella and Auburn to take our recyclables.
Oh. So, but you talked about a 20% increase, and what did I read about $150,000 cost savings? What was that?
That is because we would have paid about $150,000 more if we had single stream recycling.
Oh.
So the cooperation and partnership that we get with our residents from them continuing to separate the recyclables, paper, and the rest of the commingled, you know, from our analysis, and we asked for bids both ways, was about $150,000 in savings.
So
Yeah.
it's a positive.
It is. Yeah.
Now, what's the curbside textile recycling?
So that's a separate program. Those are going to be pink bags, and it's attempting to get something that's not a recyclable that can go into your recycling, that has been up until this date just thrown away. A lot of folks, you know, unless you took it to, you know, some charity or something, a lot of it would just go into the regular waste stream. So it's textiles, it's clothing, it's bed sheets, it's things like that. But then it's also small appliances, toasters, and pans and pots that,
Into
otherwise.
the pink bag, or will it?
Yeah, into the pink bag. Yep.
Now, when you talk about the textiles, I think, whoa, everybody, don't forget, still bring your clothes to St. Anne's, because St. Anne's still needs those clothes for people. And so it's not to take away from
It's
the
not.
good that we're doing in the community and for surrounding communities.
We hope that folks will continue to do that. Likely those who are already do that will continue
Stay
to
in the
do
habit.
that. Yeah, but we know that nationwide statistics with programs just like St. Anne's all across the country, that still about 20% of the waste stream are textiles.
Really?
So these materials will be recovered, and then they'll get kind of processed and ground up, and they'll go into like carpet padding fiber, and the padding that goes in automobiles underneath the carpeting, and
So is that
stuffing.
pillows too?
Yeah, pillows, things like that. Yep.
So we'll be able to get rid of, we won't have to hold on to our appliances. We'll be able to get those out sooner. And we'll be able to get rid of that bulky stuff and still bring our stuff to St. Anne's.
Right.
So
Yep.
gotta keep plugging St.
And
Anne's.
for those of you that are putting it in your blue bag, the pink bags are free, and better than free, the town will actually make $20 a ton in revenue.
So you'll never charge for a pink bag?
We are not charging for
Never
pink
say
bags.
never, but
Yeah, no, never say never, but we're signing a 3-year agreement with a company that's going to provide those, because there's a market for it. There's a domestic market for it.
so where would we get the pink bags? I know you'll have more education on this. but
Everyone will get 2 to start with through mailing from our contractor, and then as you put 1 out, you'll get a bag left for you, or you put 2 out, you get 2 back, or if you want to call them up and say, I'm cleaning out the basement, can you drop a few off? They'll do that as well.
Good.
Yep.
So can you put toys out there?
I would have to check on that. I'm not sure.
Oh. And is the bag fee going up for the regular trash?
Not in fiscal year 20.
Good.
So the Board of Selectmen recognize the stormwater fees going up, and the Beal School portion of that payment is coming onto the tax rate this year. So they said, we're going to burden the general tax rate a little bit more than we'd like to with the solid waste, but we're not going to ask residents to pay more. So let's see how the new hauler is. Let's see how the textile program comes into play. Let's see what revenues that we still need after this year, and then we'll study that.
Okay, and then there's safe fertilizer versus
Safe
not safe fertilizer.
Mhm.
And that's a government mandate or not a government mandate?
It is a government mandate, yeah. So that's eliminating that phosphorus problem that we talked about before. That's the center number.
Phosphorus is in fertilizer?
Correct.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep,
All right. So we'll only be able to purchase
correct.
the correct kind.
Yep.
So the government can put limits when it suits them, which is good, and I wish they'd do it more, because there was something, I can't remember right now, but I kept saying, well, if the government just told, it was at work. If the government just told us we couldn't do it, then we wouldn't do it.
Yep. Yeah, so you'll still be able to buy those fertilizers that have phosphorus in for your flowers and your gardens, in smaller quantity, but it won't be in your lawn fertilizers and things like that.
Which is more widespread.
Yep.
I don't want to forget, and I know we do have 15 minutes,
Okay.
but measles. Has Shrewsbury been impacted by the measles?
Not that I'm aware of, and I was with the public health director today that we have through the city of Worcester, and there was no mention, so no local impacts or direct impacts.
When someone is diagnosed with the measles, it causes such chaos. It causes chaos for whichever medical facility they went to. And I mean, that means whatever air circulates in that building, those people are all impacted by it for 2 hours after that person leaves the hospital or the medical facility. So they contaminate in such an incredible way. And then wherever they went, I read about one in the paper or in the news where the person had gone to 5 different retail places. So that means whoever was in that store for 2 hours after that person was there and left, all the work that goes into the local Board of Health and the state DPH when it comes to someone having a measles exposure. And I know that in New York City, they're talking about mandating measles vaccines and mandating vaccines. There's so much travel, and people are all over the world, and then they come home, and if they're not properly immunized, it's just such an awful impact on whoever's around, and there's such devastation with what can happen if someone gets the measles. I grew up at a time when we all got the measles, but I also know people that are deaf from the measles, you know, and so on. So, and then there's the false information about vaccines that's out there that needs to be publicized more often and in a way where people will believe what's true and what's fact and medical fact. But we're lucky we haven't been impacted by it, but if we are, our Board of Health will be very, very busy.
I'm confident in that.
Just so you know.
Yep.
Lake Quinsigamon Commission or the Friends of Lake Quinsigamon, who are the Friends of Lake Quinsigamon, not the commission, got a $16,000 grant, something about a Regatta Point Tower.
Oh yeah, that's I think more on the city of Worcester side of entity organization. I actually haven't heard of the grant, but I can tell you we had a great meeting a couple weeks ago at the city manager's office regarding both environmental management and public safety management for this upcoming season, and you're going to see more Worcester presence on the lake, which will be a great supplement to the environmental police and Shrewsbury PD. Keep folks safe. Gets awfully busy out there.
Yes, it does.
Yep.
Now, I was asked
Okay.
in the grocery store to ask you if they could pipe in music in the hallways at Town Hall and play oldies. And I thought, well, oldies to me means one thing. Oldies to you might mean something different.
Could be, yeah.
You got to play my oldies if you do it, not your oldies. But so someone thought that it would make Town Hall a much more cheery place when they went in to pay their bills or whatever they go there for, if they could hear music in the hallways.
So can I add something to that?
Sure.
So the assistant manager was at the high school the other day, and she reports today that they're now playing music in the hallways in the high school between classes. And I was interested to hear about that. Good
And
for them.
I heard that it actually puts a smile on people's faces
That's great.
when they're at the school and music's playing. It does create an atmosphere.
You know, of course, the first thing in my head is, well, we'd have to get a license to, you know.
Well, the first thing in my head is, please don't play rap. Okay, so we had a pedestrian accident a little while back this winter on Route 9, somewhere between Harrington Ave and Elm Street.
Right.
And what it made me think about was, we don't have pedestrian-friendly streets anywhere. Part of that is because the roads that we used to be able to walk on, we can't walk on because people drive like maniacs. And I thought, well, why do people drive like maniacs? First of all, the police can't be everywhere, but everyone is focused on getting where they need to go. And they're not focused on the fact that they're on somebody's street where their kids might be out playing or someone might be walking. And is there anything or any grants or anything available to study how to make a town more pedestrian friendly?
Yeah, I mean, that's a major initiative with the Complete Street program that we are progressing through and are now eligible for construction dollars for. So one of the most striking places that I think that you will see that, if anyone paid it or was watching when the Board of Selectmen held a meeting about the Route 20 master plan. There was a separate meeting outside of the board, but we had a review with Mass DOT on that. And the proposal for that master plan is to have a 10-foot wide shared multi-use lane on the south side of Route 20. So it's going to be 10 foot wide. It would be paved, and it would be for pedestrians, bicycles, and all those other things. So the Complete Street program recognizes all modes of transportation, pedestrian through automobile, within our streets. And you're going to see bike lanes on Main Street with this new, once the paving and the striping happens this summer. But we are focused on that. And not only do we have obligations, because we accept state dollars for transportation funding, that we'll have to make more use for multimodal, different modes of transportation.
And I wish that the state did that when they did Route 9, because there's so many more pedestrians on Route 9. Just going from the bottom of the hill near, all I can think of is Hooters, and up by the bowling alley to Stop and Shop, that whole area, you just see so many more pedestrians. And I really wish that there were sidewalks in that area. Council on Aging, did you add an outreach person?
So we did some reconfiguration of positions. There's no addition in the outreach person, but we combined 2 part-time positions. So we now have an employee that has administrative duties and is our volunteer coordinator. So I found it the organization set up a little choppy. It was, I think appropriate to have a number of part-time individuals, save money, things like that. But I think it kind of, we had too many. It was too disjointed, too many people passing in the night, so to speak, and we didn't have cohesive administrative support within that department. So we made that change. We now have 1 additional full-time position where we used to have 2 part-timers. Yep.
And the Glavin property, the property was transferred to the town.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's very exciting and very, very good.
Correct.
So the town owns now from where the Glavin Center is now, all the way through all the soccer fields?
So Shrewsbury Youth Soccer owns the soccer fields,
right.
But the town owns all the balance of the property, including the agricultural fields to the east of Lake Street and the Glavin proper and where the barns are up there.
And because of the school construction that will be coming, the road will be closed for 4 months.
That's right.
Is it from Route 9?
No, it will be as close to the property line as possible. So residents will still be able to get to Hawk Ridge and the Shrewsbury Housing Authority properties. And then from the south side, individuals still be able to get to all the Shrewsbury Youth Soccer parking lots. So it'll really be contained within the Glavin proper parcel for that roadway realignment. It'll be from mid-September through mid-December is the target for it.
So people will just have to reroute
Right.
themselves to get to those fields.
Right.
And that's possible, but it will impact, for example, Howe Ave and Harris Ave. And
We're going to do our best to
Ross.
keep non-local traffic off of Howe Ave and all those roads. We're going to try to do a lot of signage on Route 9 and Route 20, basically telling motorists that the best way is to switch those 2 roads is to get to 140 and
Right.
make your changes there.
So that's good.
Yeah.
We're running really short on time, and I have so many questions. What's a green community?
So green community is a designation by the state where the town or the community commits to both some policies, some bylaws as it relates to energy efficiency in the building code, and to reduce its energy footprint or consumption by 20% over a 5-year period. And we recently finally received that designation because we checked all the boxes.
Checked all the boxes.
Yep. And we got a grant for $183,000.
And you talked about green communities when you were being interviewed for the job.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were really in tune to what that meant and what needed to be done. So you had your own planning and thoughts on that before you even got to us.
Yes,
So
yep.
thank you for that.
Sure, of course.
Okay, I'm jumping around here. So we got a $15,000 revitalization grant through Mass Downtown Initiative. And that's to develop and enhance the center of town and help small businesses?
Well, so that one's, the most recent one's a wayfinding signage.
Yeah.
So, we'll look to have consistent, cohesive signage.
Do we need a lot of signs there?
Well, so the first study that we did was a parking study to see where
Right.
the parking is. And there's significant parking there. We just need to provide a little bit more notification and accommodation to folks so they can find it. And it will also start to bring a cohesion into the town center that, you know, geographically it exists, but folks will kind of recognize that if they're from out of town a little bit more, if they see consistent signing and streetscape things that we'll be working on.
And the fire department got an $8,254 grant for public education and for seniors and school population.
Right, yep.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's a good dedicated fire safety effort.
So it's another grant. The graduation for the 2019 class will be at the DCU Center because of the population of the graduating class. That's got to be expensive, huh?
Yeah, I think it's been off-site for a number of years.
It has.
Yeah.
Yep. So that is interesting.
Yep.
It shows that not only are the schools full, you can't even fit the people in for graduation. Bill reuse, is there any progress with that?
The committee has worked in concert with the Mass Development review of the town center and that site particularly. So we're still a little bit early in the process as far as when we need to kind of get RFPs out there to the marketplace, because remember, we won't be giving up that property until the late summer of 2021. So, but they're making good progress.
Good. And you have an intermunicipal agreement with Westboro for a wiring inspector?
Yeah, so that's actually a backup wiring inspector.
Sort of like regionalization?
Yeah.
And so how will that work?
So it provides coverage that really, since each town has one main wiring inspector, now that we've brought that under the municipal umbrella, that when our inspector's out on vacation or if there's an emergency circumstance that our inspector can't respond to, that Westboro's will respond on Westboro's dime and vice versa whenever Westboro has an issue like that. So it's, you know, it's a good reciprocal mutual aid agreement that we have with Westboro, building upon that relationship.
That's great.
Yeah.
We have how many? I'm not getting to all my questions. We have how many? 37 articles for town meeting. Correct. And 6 by petition?
That's correct.
How many nights will a town meeting be?
I'm really thinking 3 this year.
I think so. We only have 30 seconds left, and I want to mention that for people that are getting phone scams, phone calls, if you get a call from the Shrewsbury, it claims to be from a police department, it's not the Shrewsbury Police calling. I think we need to keep reminding people, because when the person calls, they make you feel like they're calling for your town, and they're not. Our union group does not make phone calls and request money in that way. So just be careful with that. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Time's up.